Good evening, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting today is held on the Wadjagnunga Budja, and I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to elders past, present and future, and I thank all past and present members of the community that have supported the city to better understand and value Noongar culture within the city of Wanneroo. And I declare the meeting officially open at 6 o'clock. I invite you to bow your head in prayer. Lord, we thank you for blessing our city, our community and our council. Guide us in our decision-making to act fairly, without fear or favour, and with compassion, integrity, wisdom and honesty. May we show true leadership, be inclusive of all, and guide all of the city's people and many families to a prosperous future that we all may share. We ask this in your name. Before we begin this evening, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the coronation of His Majesty the King Charles III and Her Majesty Queen Camilla that took place earlier last month. With more than 15% of the city's residents from the UK, this special event is of great importance to many within the city of Wanneroo. This tradition dates back thousands of years, with some of us old enough and lucky enough to have witnessed Queen Elizabeth's coronation in 1953, who reigned for just over 70 years before passing on the 8th of September last year. On behalf of the City, Council and our community, we wish King Charles and Queen Camilla a long, fulfilling and prosperous reign. Please note that the audio-visual proceedings of tonight's meeting will be live broadcast online, with the exception of matters discussed behind closed doors. The broadcast of the proceedings of the meeting can be accessed live and on demand through the City of Wanneroo YouTube channel. Our attendances are as per the record, and we have no apologies or leave of absence this evening. We have item 3, public question and statement time. We have questions received from Mrs Newton in Wanneroo, which have written responses that are available to everyone, Mrs N Yeager from Sinagra and Mr Burke from Nangara. We also have questions from people in the gallery this evening, and our first person for asking questions is Peter Long. Peter, if you could come to the lectern and give us your name and the suburb in which you live, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Oh, I'll just make an announcement quickly while Peter's coming down. The following rules apply to public question and statement time. Public questions and statements should only relate to the business of local government and should not be a personal statement or opinion. Only questions relating to matters affecting the local government will be considered at a council meeting, and only questions that relate to the purpose of the meeting will be considered at a special council meeting. Questions may be taken on notice and responded to after the meeting. Questions may not be directed at a specific council members or city employees. Questions are not to be framed in such a way as to reflect adversely on a particular council member or a city employee, and first priority will be given to persons who are asking questions relating to items on the current council meeting agenda, and second priority will be given to public statements. Only public statements regarding items on the council agenda under consideration will be heard. Each person seeking to ask questions or make a statement may address the council for a maximum of 3 minutes each. Thank you, Peter. If you would like to, yes, stand there. Thank you.
Thank you for calling me out, but when I first came in here, I thought maybe I would have some questions, but then I decided I'd wait to hear what everybody else had to say. So I have no questions, actually.
Thank you. We also have John Quinlivan, who is down to ask questions. John, could you come down here and give us the suburb that you live in before you start asking your questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm talking on behalf of Peter Burke, who couldn't be here due to personal issues, but he's submitted questions today in writing, and I won't read them through all of them. I'll just go to the key points. Questions I noticed was, are councillors in Transperth aware that the number of both villages will exceed 800 people by 2025. Peter goes on to mention discussions he's had with Transperth, and also the fact he's been in contact with the local MLA, Sabrina Winton, who's looking at some solutions. So I'm not sure the council is aware of that, which is all in the written documentation. Also, his statement, I'll read the final statement from him. He's got statement, asking for 15 minutes 3 times a week is surely possible. He's talking about the time for the bus. I asked that the council to engage with Transperth again. We are not asking for a new bus route. We are just asking for a small detour from the existing routes. Peter Burke, the Green. So I'm just talking on behalf of Peter and a lot of the people from the Green who are behind me, and hopefully you can see what you can do for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Quinlivan. Are there any more questions from the gallery? Okay, if there are no more questions, we'll go to confirmation of minutes, OCO 1623, minutes of the ordinary council meeting on the 16th of May 2023. Do I have a mover and seconder for this? Mover, Deputy Mayor Treby, seconder, Councillor Civic. Do I have any speakers against? If I have no speakers against, councillors, could you please cast your vote? Councillor Miles? And that is passed unanimously. Okay, announcements by the Mayor without discussion. I have a few announcements to make this evening, and before we move to tonight's agenda, I would like to briefly recognise an award that the City received last month. Youth Care presented the City with an award in recognition of the City's long-standing support of the organisation, which supports the wellbeing of children and young people through specific programs, sessions and opportunities that draw together various aspects of community. Over the past 2 decades, the City has helped raise $697,700 for youth care. In May, we hosted a morning tea with youth care chaplains and area chaplains to discuss current issues faced by our young people, as well as issues facing our local schools. The City is committed to supporting local young people and providing them with safe spaces where they can socialise, build friendships and access support services when they're outside of school. It is crucial that young people can also access support when they are in school, which is why Youth Care's chaplaincy service is so important. And so we received an award for our service towards Youth Care on their 50th anniversary, because we've been involved since then. And I'd just like to give this to Ms Terralink, who runs the department that looks after youth care. And I have one more item to raise before we begin tonight. The City recently received a commendation in the National Growth Areas Alliance Awards Let's Pool Together, the Alkimos Aquatic and Recreation Centre project. The National Growth Areas Alliance Awards celebrate and showcase excellence and best practice from projects and initiatives supporting the development of growth areas across the country. This award recognises that advocacy is a tool that can be used in a variety of ways. At the 2022 federal election, the Let's Pool Together campaign approach was to build on the work already completed for the community engagement and strengthen the support for the project through to construction. Having Olympic swimmer Blair Evans as the ambassador was also a good move. It was a whole of city and community effort, with both major political parties promising funding to move forwards to construction. The City is now in discussion with the federal government to get the funding of the $25 million towards the ARC. Well done to everyone involved, and the award is here. And once again, I think that goes to Ms Terralink, or her team, should I say. And now we move to item 7 on the agenda, petitions. There are 2 petitions to receive tonight, and the first one is PTO 10623, which is presented by Councillor Berry, and it's the request for reconsideration regarding the former Quinns Rocks Caravan Park redevelopment.
Thank you, Mayor Aitken. I'd just like to do a short summary of this as well, if I may. On the 22nd of September 2020, Council received a petition signed by 1,148 residents opposed to any development that would increase from the original footprint of the former caravan park. The petition demonstrated at that time the community were and remain concerns regarding the outcomes for the former caravan park. Today, I present another petition signed by 1,502 local residents that request Council's consideration regarding the former Quinns Rocks Caravan Park redevelopment to cease any further discussions with Heritage WA Investments and fully investigate the feasibility and costs to develop the former Quinns Rock Caravan Park site, central west portion of Lot 211, Quinns Road, Mindari, for active community use, including parkland, outdoor activity space, barbecues, sheltered areas, playground, food and beverage, light retail options, increased parking facilities, suitable beach access, additional public shower and toilet facilities. This will allow the last remaining foreshore in the Quinns Rock and Mindari area to be enjoyed by all residents, ratepayers and visitors to the area. 1,361 of these petitioners live within the city of Wanneroo. 141 of these petitioners do not live within the city of Wanneroo, but all signatures were collected locally to the site of the proposed development. Given the close proximity of Kinross, Burns Beach and other suburbs, these other petitioners are local to the site and more local than other suburbs actually within the city of Wanneroo. Local opposition to this site not being developed, as many community surveys, community consultations and community working groups has not changed in years, and residents remain rightly concerned. As the ward councillor, I was elected to represent the interests of electors, ratepayers and residents, amongst other criteria. I would urge my fellow councillors to support those residents and ratepayers, and tonight I am sad that despite years of asking the local community, residents and ratepayers for their involvement, they feel unheard and had no action, had to action another petition. I believe we need to be careful we are not become a council that simply supports development and ignores those that vote for us and rely on us to represent them.
Councillor Berry, I understand you asked if you could present something extra, but this is a debate motion. You're debating and you are supposed to just present the petition. I thought it was a description of the petition, not a debate.
Well, I'm on the last sentence.
Yeah, well, I just present the petition, please.
Okay, I present the petition tonight to be added to the previous petitions and sincerely hope the local community is finally heard. Thank you, Mayor Aitken.
Thank you. Can I have a mover to accept the petitions? Oh, yes, Deputy Mayor Treby, I would love another petition, which is requesting speed bumps to Dalecross Avenue in Madeley. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Aitken. I have a petition of 25 signatories requesting Council consider to look at the current traffic control measures on Dalecross Avenue in Madeley. The measures taken have shown to be ineffective to slow traffic, and we are asking the Council to work in consultation with local residents to provide a more effective plan. We want to slow the speed of the traffic to protect our children.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Treby. Do I have a mover to accept the petitions? Yes, Councillor Nguyen, and seconded Councillor Civic. Can we please go to the vote, cast our vote now? Thank you. And that was passed unanimously. And there is an update on petitions, 2 petitions in the agenda about the installation of the CCTV mast in the car park at Queenscliff Park, and the request to close pedestrian access way between Feathertop Rise and the avenue in Alexander Heights. Declarations of interest by council members, including the nature and extent of which the interests are to be made at the commencement of the item to which the interest relates. Declarations of interest forms are to be completed and handed to the Chief Executive Officer. And so we're going to reports now. And I think we need to bring an item forward, which is, yes, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Aitken. Just in regards to item ASO2, response to the petition to add a bus route to the Green Lifestyle Village and Lakelands Lifestyle Village, if we could bring that one forward, please.
Yes, do I have a seconder for that? Yes, Councillor Civic. Okay, so we'll bring item ASO 20623 forward on the agenda and we will go to the vote. That's passed unanimously. Okay, do I have a mover or seconder for the substantive amendment as in the agenda? I will offer a second opportunity for a mover or seconder on the substantive in the agenda. And I offer a third time, and if there is no mover or seconder, the substantive in the agenda falls over and we go to the alternative. And Councillor Wright has moved the alternative. Who is the seconder? Councillor Civic. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to the alternative recommendation? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Aitken, and good evening, councillors. This alternative amendment provides a consensus view for both parties. The alternative is partly an advocacy amendment, but also provides assistance to both the Green and Lakelands lifestyle villages, with a 3-month trial using the existing city's community transport service, booking a regular time slot each week to demonstrate that a service is in need, but also assist in further discussions with the local member for Wanneroo. The difference between these two lifestyle villages in Gnangara is they are isolated without basic services such as footpaths or street lighting, making it unsafe for our seniors to access Public Transport Authority bus routes on Dundebar Road. It is critical that we provide an avenue and voice for our community residents in Gnangara to ensure that they have the services to meet the demands until East Wanneroo development starts to proceed. Until then, we need a temporary solution to assist our seniors in accessing basic and vital services such as medical centres and shopping centres. But this also delivers strong benefits to our seniors around community activation, mental health and wellbeing for our seniors, to ensure they continue to live a healthy and prosperous life. The alternative amendment also requests the CEO to further explore ways of engaging with WALGA and LGIS around insurance and other issues that currently cause red tape for local governments. State government also has a role to play in this, as it provides a vital service through the Public Transport Authority. And I think Public Transport Authority needs to review their feedback they've provided the city, because this is a space that they currently operate in and continue to expand and look for alternative routes, especially when East Wanneroo comes online. Supporting this alternative leads to a further report coming to Council in September to analyse the results that are going to be collected by the petition organiser, and also allows for the data to be explored, making all information available to Council and the public to consider, and looking at future alternative options, whether that be through the PTA and continuing our advocacy in that space, or looking at other alternative measures that come through the requests of the alternative amendment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Civic, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for Councillor Wright for bringing this forward and the amendments to this actual, or a new proposed alternative motion to this actual item. I really just want to add that as a result of this, I would like this particular situation to be brought up as a local government or a WALGA issue, where we, or the council, writes to WALGA asking that this be brought up at one of our state council meetings coming up in the future with regards to villages like these, where the community actually pay strata levies, and in order to be able to afford bus services for themselves as standalone villages, etc., that they have the opportunities to be able to explore all avenues of finance with regards to grants, etc., so that they can actually afford to buy their own bus or lease their own bus and use it for their own community, etc., and hence taking pressure off local government if that's the case. However, we do have buses with specific conditions on them. But I think if we can get a general statewide feedback on this, and it doesn't really matter where the villages are, they will require their own buses for their own itineraries, etc., in the future, whether it be for going to shopping centres, etc., etc. So if we can do that and get extreme support, especially from state and federal governments for funding and assistance, it would be a worthwhile outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Civic. Do we have any speakers against this proposed alternative? A question? Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in relation to recommendation number 4, requesting that the Chief Executive Officer explores with LGIS, what is intended by that word explores, given administration's comment that the administration had already had discussions with LGIS and it had identified a number of significant risks?
Mr CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will approach LGS and just ask them to expand in more detail their position. I suspect that LGS is our insurer, they'll provide conditions of how they would seek any bus provisions, insurance exposure to be mitigated by the people or group operating the bus.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Are there any other questions? Yes, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mayor Aiken. My questions is directed to our CEO. The report notes that the city has previously entered into an arrangement in respect of what was known as the Yanchep Two Rocks Community Bus Service. That service was wound up, I think, about 3 or 4 months ago. How long was that service on foot for? I do recall seeing that bus over a number of years travelling within the area, please.
Mr CEO.
For you, Mayor, considerable number of years. I certainly can recall it for most of my tenure with the city. I might ask the Director of Community and Place if she has a specific year, but I would have thought at least 20 years.
Ms Terrelink.
Yes, through you, Mayor. So in 1989, the city applied for a grant on behalf of the Yanchep Two Rocks Volunteer Drivers Association for a 12-month lease. So it's been going since at least 1989.
And
Thank you, Ms Terrelink. Do you have another question?
Supplementary, Madam Ma'am.
Yes,
my understanding is that
Baker.
the arrangement was, how do I put it, varied, so to speak, and the bus was actually, if you like, transferred to that entity that you referred to earlier, Madam Mayor, or that I should say that Ms Terrelink referred to, and that group now operates the bus itself.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. How does this relate directly to what we're trying to do with the current
Well, I'm just
community?
looking at an analogous situation, that's all.
Okay.
It's worked before. There's no reason why it can't work in this scenario.
Yes, just remember we need to keep on topic. Ms Terrelink.
Yes, through you, Mayor, there was a governance review undertaken of the arrangement and it was actually found because of a number of risks that were associated, the bus was then transferred back to the Incorporated Association and they now run the service.
Thank you, Ms Terrelink. Councillor Herridge.
Just a question, if I can, Mayor. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify number 3. It states that we'll run a 3-month trial. What exactly will the 3-month trial actually be?
Mr CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd envisage that those details are yet to be determined, but will be determined by Ms Terrelink's team meeting with other representatives from the village. But I might ask Ms Terrelink if there's any further information.
Ms Terrelink.
Through you, Mayor, we will have to have discussions, obviously, with the lead petitioner in this regard to firm up what the arrangements might be. As it stands at the moment, though, the city's community transport service does have some buses available on a Monday and a Wednesday that could be hired to the village, noting that the village would provide their own C-Class driver's licensed driver and also the relevant insurances as well.
Thank you, Ms Terrelink. Any other questions? Yes, councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mayor Aiken. My question's addressed to Ms Terrelink. Paragraph 3 of the recommendation states, of course, there will be a 3-month trial that Councillor Herring has just referred to. Paragraph 5, of course, states that there is a request for a further report on this matter to be presented before the September 2023 Ordinary Council meeting. Is it fair to say that that 3-month trial will be well and truly completed prior to September this year, please?
Mr CEO.
I would imagine it's nearing completion, not well and truly completed, but nearing completion.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Are there any further questions? If there are no, yes, councillor Nguyen.
And can you just confirm that there's seniors group are exempt from the paying fees for the hire of the bus?
Ms Terrelink.
Through you, Mayor, we have referenced that in the administration comment, noting, however, that it is for specific, the exemption is for specific purposes. So provided the use aligns with that specific purpose, there would be an exemption from fees.
Thank you, Ms Terrelink. Deputy Mayor Treby, do you have a question?
Not a question as such. Well, actually, let me phrase it as a question. Given that it's a 3-month trial and we're part way through June, it occurs to me that concurrently the trial will finish and report's going to come to council, which really doesn't effectively give it enough time to interrogate the information and the data that we will have to have an informed decision come to council. Just wondering whether or not that matter or that report should be October instead of September. That would allow sufficient time for administration to put a well-considered report together for council.
Councillor Wright, would you be happy to change that from September to October?
Yes, I'm happy for that, Mayor.
Okay, so we'll, yeah, and the seconder happy with that? Yep, so we'll change that from September to October 2023. Are there any more questions on this item? Are there any speakers against this proposed alternative? If there are no speakers against, councillors, could you please cast your vote? And that was passed unanimously. So everyone from the green, the trial has been passed and will happen and everything's right. And if you want to go home in this cold weather and get rugged up, you're quite welcome to go home to a hot chocolate. Sorry? Yes.
Let the people know, explain why so they can hear it on the web.
Yeah, I'm just going to wait until they leave. Okay, so we'll return to the agenda proper. Do I have anyone wanting to? Yes, Councillor Rowe.
Mayor, I would like to move a procedural motion for a change in the order of proceedings to bring forward the confidential items, being the staff matters.
Yes, and do I have a seconder for that? Yes, Deputy Mayor Treby. If everyone's happy with that, we will go to the vote to change of order of business. So that was passed unanimously. Now I need to do a second vote to go behind closed doors. Do I have a mover for the Yes, Councillor Civic, seconder Councillor Baker. Can we cast our vote to go behind closed doors, please? When we go behind closed doors, everyone has to leave the auditorium as we discuss the confidential matters. Thank you.
And then you'll be returning back to the normal agenda.
And then we'll return to the normal agenda for you.
It was 13-1.
Councillor Nguyen voted against. Okay, so as to item CRO 10623 staff matters, that was carried with 2 councillors voting against it, which was Councillor Nguyen and Councillor Wright. So the recommendation that was passed by council by absolute majority is in relation to attachment 1 titled CEO recruitment information and statewide public notice of this confidential report. A, adopts the position description and selection criteria at confidential attachment 1 for the position of Chief Executive Officer, confidential attachment 1 draft proposed application pack. B, resolves for the purposes of providing statewide public notice of the vacancy of the position of Chief Executive Officer. I, a contract term of 5 years, and II, a total benefit package of up to $404,488 subject to negotiation. C, authorises Bilby Towning Teal to give the statewide public notice of the vacancy of the position of Chief Executive Officer by giving a notice of confidential attachment 1 by the mechanisms at confidential attachment 2. And in italics, confidential attachment 1, draft proposed application pack, confidential attachment 2, proposed statewide public notice distribution mechanisms. 2, in relation to attachment 2 titled CEO recruitment approval draft proposed CEO employment contract, adopts the draft proposed employment contract for the Chief Executive Officer as in the confidential attachment 1, in italics, confidential attachment 1, draft proposed CEO employment contract. And as I said, it was passed by an absolute majority with 2 councillors voting against it, Councillor Nguyen and Councillor Wright. Okay, so we move back to the agenda proper. And we go to corporate strategy and performance, CSO 10623. Do I have a mover and... Sorry? Oh, where is that? Sorry. No. Okay, so planning and sustainability, PSO 10623, review of local planning policy 5.3, East Wanneroo. Do I have a mover and seconder for this item? Moved Councillor Miles, seconder Councillor Civic. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Look, very much appreciate the fact that we've got to do the local planning policy of 5.3, and the document does have quite a few points that we will obviously be asking for future developers and landowners to be putting forward when they do their planning and their structure plans coming over the next few years. The only, as I raised last week, the only concern I have is the amount of bitumen and the road widths. I would like to see that reduced. So I'd be very interested to see how the public consultation goes in that space and whether anybody brings any suggestions up. The only, apart from that, I'm quite happy with the report, or the policy, I should say, but I do just want to ask a follow-up question on the actual, Mayor, on the recommendation 2, and it's got A, goes to the Department of Planning, Urban Development Institute, 3, publishes the draft on the City of Wanneroo City website, making it available for viewing at the city's Civic Centre. When it goes onto the city's website, does that mean it's going to go on Your Say as well? Is that what administration's meaning at the same time?
Okay, yep.
Mr CEO?
For you, Madam Mayor, yes.
Okay, thank you. Other than that, happy for it to go out for advertising.
Councillor Civic, do you want to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Briefly. Yeah, look, this review of the local planning policy is very important in the whole context of East Wanneroo to make sure that the city is protected from every aspect, from roads, from subdivision, from tree cover, from enhancement of lakes, etc., etc. And if we don't get this right, and that also includes developer contributions, to make sure that this particular area will be outstanding. And I think having this particular policy in place will hopefully determine an area where many, many people will want to come and live. And if we have the right constraints in place with the Department of Planning and all the other bodies that are involved in this particular development, including developers, etc., we will have an outstanding area of development with all the catering required for services, which will be very, very important in the whole context of this particular area. So I'm happy to move this and make sure that we certainly protect our vested interest in terms of community centres, etc., etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Savitton. Do we have any speakers against this item? Councillor Baker, do you have a speak against?
No, can I please ask a couple of questions, please, Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Baker.
Thank you very much. My question is addressed to Mark Dixon. Of course, one of the objectives of this whole plan is to create shade on verges and median strips, and we refer to different road structures and attach different conditions and requirements. The objective of the trees, of course, as I understand it, is to provide shade. And when I went through this over the weekend in detail, I noticed that we are recommending that several deciduous trees be planted along our verges, council verges and median strips. And of course, a deciduous tree is a tree that sheds its leaves annually and becomes dormant. And as such, during that period, of course, it does not give, well, as much shade as it does, of course, when it's got leaves. Obviously, it probably loses 90% of its leaf effect and shade effect. Just that I note that some of the trees that we're recommending are deciduous. Running through that list, I know that some of these deciduous trees have a greater canopy, but that's only when it's...
Councillor Baker, what is your question?
Is it wise to use a deciduous tree or plant a deciduous tree when trying to create shade? Particularly it only works for 6 months of the year, roughly. Thanks.
Mr Dixon.
Through you, Mayor, yes, I think it's fine for the city to choose some deciduous trees. The important months when tree canopy cover is in place is during the summer months, the warmer months. Actually, it does have benefits for certain street trees to allow the leaves to shed, so it enables passive solar gain into properties that lie adjacent, which then assists in warming those properties during the colder months. So for many reasons, it's appropriate for the city to choose some deciduous trees in certain locations.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. Councillor Baker, do you have another question?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor, through you to Mr Dixon. On pages 55 and 56 of the agenda, there's reference to different cross-sections, of course, and on the previous page, 55, the same wording is used. In the last point, paragraph 4, it reads, and I could be misreading this, please forgive me, subject to safety and design standards, the road camber is required to fall towards the central medians where provided. Now, what's meant by central medians? Does that mean at the top of the camber? Because if it was an inverse camber, it would fall to the centre.
Mr Singh, could you respond to that question, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I think that will be dependent upon each individual road design, that when there is appropriate and is possible, it could be a negative camber toward the median.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Do you have another question?
Supplementary, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Baker.
In relation to, on my reading, all of the cross-sections of streets referred to in the report, each has that requirement at number 4, namely that in effect, the road camber is required to fall towards the central medians where provided. Whereas each diagram shows that it's not a case of each of the 4 road surfaces depicted in the various cross-sections shows the road with the usual camber. In other words, a camber with the highest point is in the middle of the road rather than an inverted camber upside down where the water would flow to the median of the road.
Mr Singh,
seems to be a
like
bit of an inconsistency.
Respond to that, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. My understanding is this is a standard note which has been provided across all cross-sections. The drainage or negative camber will be only provided where it's appropriate and can be designed.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Are there any speakers against this item? There are no speakers against this item. If councillors, please cast your vote. And the item was passed unanimously. We now go to PSO 20623, preparation of Amendment 204 to District Planning Scheme Number 2, resolution of scheme anomalies affecting land in East Wanneroo, Cell 3 in brackets Wanneroo agreed structure plan number 5. Do I have a mover for this item? Moved Councillor Miles, second Councillor Civic. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Only to the fact it's a lot of work administration they're having to put in for such a small amount of impact. I understand that there are several anomalies there, and I understand also administration want to tidy up some of those other planning issues that are affecting those landowners. So I'm happy for it to go ahead and obviously be approved, and can't wait till we see some more abnormalities from the Directorate.
Mr. Civic.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this particular structure, Cell 3, is really a tidy up. I think it's working in line with the R codes, etc., to get possibly higher density. We did get an application on AMS Road, but it looks like that hasn't happened, subject to future subdivisional development. But really, it's a tidy up, and I think a tightening up of the town planning scheme and conditions. And I'm happy to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that item is passed unanimously. I move to PSO 30623, preparation of amendment number 207 to District Planning Scheme number 2 and revocation of Hainsworth Local Structure Plan number 98. Do I have a mover and seconder for this? Moved Deputy Mayor Treby, seconded Councillor Rowe. Deputy Mayor Treby, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Briefly, I think this is an outstanding example of how council over the years has come together with a structure plan approved by the state to fix and remedy some of the social engineering failures of the 1960s. Much of the area that was identified within the local area structure plan 98 surrounded or encompassed, if you like, a lot of old state housing Homes West homes, and was a central point for much of the dysfunction that was experienced in the South Ward of the city. It's an outstanding result to see and know what that was like to what we've now achieved today. And normalising and harmonising the planning structure plan into normal planning processes now, I think is a testament to the very good work that the city's planning officers have done over the years, has resulted in a number of very new housing stock and wide range of housing stock, but also much better improved public open space and higher level of quality of life and living for local residents in that area. So it's very pleasing to see this report come to council, and I think normalising that structure plan into a desirable area for the local community to now call home, I think is a very good outcome.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Treby. Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to this?
Briefly, thank you, Mayor. Just to echo what the Deputy Mayor's already said, and to add, I suppose, that the reason that we are moving towards revocation is because subdivision is complete in the Amble estate, and it's led to high quality development and affordable living in Girraween on the old Hainsworth site. And I think it demonstrates that sometimes there can be a misconception that development occurs exclusively in the north or the east, but we do have established suburbs in the south that are having these pocket developments or estates that are being supported by Development WA. It is true that we don't have the large developers really demonstrating significant interest in our areas, but nonetheless, we're seeing residents subdividing their blocks, moving into estates, particularly that I suppose, gentrification of the area. We've got young families now settling in Girraween, attending Roseworth Primary School or the School of the Year, Girraween Senior High School. And it's demonstrating that even though these suburbs were established in the 70s, they're regaining this new and revitalised sense of purpose in the modern era. And that's really refreshing to see. And I hope that we can continue to see it in the decades to come.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Are there any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that is passed unanimously. We go to item PSO 40623, consideration of development application for an amendment to DA 2018/736 Childcare Centre at 103 Greenvale Place, Banksia Grove, DA 2022/1439. Do I have a mover for this item? Yes, Councillor Huntley, and a seconder, Councillor Miles. Councillor Huntley, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This was a contentious development at the beginning and has proved its worth. It is already built, it is running. We don't seem to have that any record of complaints. So at this stage, I'm happy to support this motion that they extend the amount of children and staff and a few car bags.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on Councillor Huntley, the childcare centre was approved by Council, as we know, for the mid-90s amount of children. The WA Department will have to obviously assess whether or not they can get a licence expansion. That's not what we do here. We only make sure that the building is compliant. And in this case, we have to obviously provide or ask the owner to provide more play space outside, which is the main factor for childcare services. In doing so, there obviously does need to be some extra car parking on site. It is a large lot. It is a special residential lot. They were placed there initially to be the separation between the urban onset down there in Banksia Grove and over the road, the Meridian Dundebar area. I don't see that this, while there has been some objections by some residents, I don't see the extra amount of staff or young people that are going to be schooled there or sleep there if they're babies or toddlers. It's going to make that much difference to what's already in place, and I'm quite happy with the recommendations that administration have put in place.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Do I have any speakers against this item? Do you have a speaker against? Councillor Rowe.
I think I'll just clarify. I will vote in support, but I will speak against on the actual reasons outlined by the deputation. However, I realise that as an elected member, I need to assess it on planning considerations. So I'll be voting in support because of the planning considerations, but due to the objections raised last week, I wanted to note those as my own objections as well.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Are there any other speakers for? Councillor Baker.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. The applicant, of course, has a long distinguished history in the northern suburbs of providing daycare centre services to many families. Of my reckoning, the total period in which the operator has been operating within our neck of the woods is over some 30 years. The rights that applicant has are non-conforming rights, but they are still nonetheless valid and subsisting non-conforming rights, which has been confirmed by Mr Dixon in his report. The other point too, of course, is that those non-conforming rights, which are valid, haven't been in any way waived or extinguished, so they are valid and subsisting. And of course, the issue of childcare in our suburbs is particularly importance for young families, particularly young working mothers, and these facilities are necessary as our population continues to expand, particularly with first homeowners and young couples moving into our suburbs. So I wholly support the application, and it's good news for young families living in close proximity to this daycare centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Are there any speakers against this item? Deputy Mayor Treby.
Thank you, Mayor Aitken. Like my fellow colleague, I have reservations, but I will be supporting the application on the basis of its planning merit, which is why it appears on the agenda this evening. But just a word of caution, councillors, because this happens on a regular basis and it's called incremental planning approval. And it's occurred over many, many years because the number that was originally requested is very close to now what's being requested. And it was approved at a lower number as a result of a SAT process. Had that not gone through, or had it gone through SAT without that reconsideration by this council, we would have had no controls. We now find ourselves in a circumstance where through incremental planning processes, we're back at the numbers that they originally wished to accommodate that location. That aside, that's on planning grounds. But the service that's provided is, in my view, absolutely necessary by all accounts. The quality of the facility is extraordinarily good. The reputation of service provision at that location, again, is matched by its service quality as being incredibly good. So on the basis of its planning merits, I'll be supporting it, but raising those points, councillors, that for those around the table into the future, be very careful and mindful of incremental planning, because when you see planning or planning applications coming back on a regular basis, there's an incrementality about it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Treby. Are there any speakers for? Councillor Civic.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to reiterate the comments of the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Rowe. I recall this item coming to council, and I think the developer gave an undertaking that was going to be the maximum for this particular site. He's now changed. Obviously, there's more potential there for him. I don't dispute the zone now and the approval given by council when it did under the direction of the SAT. The developers put a fence on the southern boundary. I don't know what that will do, but it's something there to alleviate some noise if that's the case. But on those grounds, I also support it. Thank you.
Do I have a speaker against?
Question, Madam Mayor?
So long as it's not a statement.
No.
Or a long statement leading into it. Okay, Councillor Baker,
no
your
preamble.
question.
No preamble either, Madam Mayor. My question is addressed to Mr Dixon. Mr Dixon, are you aware that according to the last census, the City of Wanneroo's birth rate is increasing at an incremental rate?
Mr Dixon, or I'm sure we all are, but Mr Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd have to take that question on notice to review the census information and give a fully informed response to Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. Okay, are there any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And it was passed unanimously after all that discussion. And we do have an amendment for ASO 10623. Do I have a mover and seconder for the substantive, please? Moved, Councillor Miles, seconded. This is for the substantive, not for the amendment. Deputy Mayor Treby. And we have an amendment, so would you like to speak to the amendment, Councillor Coetzee? And you need a seconder for it.
Thank you. I do have Councillor Baker as seconder.
Thank you. If you'd like to speak to the proposed amendment.
Thank you. Firstly, I would like to thank you, Mr. Singh, for all his help last week with helping me with this amendment. We spent lots of time on the phone. Thank you for that. Also, thank you to the councillors who I've spoken to last week to help me out with this amendment, to find a solution, hopefully a solution to this problem. Beachside Parade in Yenshep, between
Zamia Rise and Templetonia Boulevard. Those residents are crying out for help. They live it, they hear it, and they are troubled that an accident might happen. The road is where there are no it's a road where there are no fences. There are children going to school, people are walking there, dogs are walking, everything. So currently there are plus minus 300 houses with one road to enter and exit into the area at the back, north of Beachside Parade. Yes, in the near future, Barrier Road will have a turn-off into that area, but left in, left out. So I can really see a lot of problems arising around that. The bottom part of Capricorn Estate, the residents west from that specific area also have a left in, left out. Those residents whose children are in Yanchep Beach Primary School are most probably also using their left out onto Two Rocks Road and then take a right onto Valencia Road and then right onto Beachside Parade, exactly where the problem is. That road is full of hooning cars, day and night. Developers will most probably make it a bit easier when they develop Templetonia Boulevard with a roundabout on Marmion Avenue. Marmion Avenue will hopefully open soon as well, but I don't think it will solve the problem very soon. I'm sure about that. I ask administration to develop a suitable traffic management option for the Beachside Parade and requesting the WA Police for ongoing enforcement of the 50-kilometre speed limit. This might help to prevent an accident from happening. I ask all of my fellow councillors to please help me and support my amendments to help prevent an accident from happening.
Councillor Baker, do you want to speak to
yes,
this
thank you.
item?
Thank you, Mayor Aitken. This length of carriageway is located in one of our burgeoning cells, so to speak, or estates within Yanchep. Of course, it's known as the Capricorn Estate. This estate, I would estimate, would be 80% chock-a-block full of young families with young kids, most of whom cycle to and walk to and from school at the Yanchep Lagoon Beach Primary School on Beachside Parade. The street is very busy, and unfortunately I've seen quite a few near misses myself, and not just on this length of carriageway, but the length of carriageway approximately 500 metres to the south on the same street. Incredibly dangerous. The thing is that paragraph 3 requests that administration develop a suitable traffic management option for the implementation of Beachside Parade and a report to council by 2024, April 2024, next year. By then, the Marmion Avenue extension would have opened. By then, the city would have had a good opportunity to assess how the local traffic has reacted to that opening, particularly in this area of the Capricorn Estate. And the administration will be in a far better position to consider the various traffic management or treatment options for this particular length of carriageway and its related intersections onto Marmion Avenue. So I think the amendments certainly have the effect of bolstering, so to speak, and increasing the merit of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Are there any speakers against this amendment? If there are no speakers against this amendment, I ask that your councillors cast your vote, please. And that is passed unanimously. So, Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to the amended substantive motion, please?
Just briefly, thank you, Mayor. Just to support Councillor Baker and Coetzee on this particular location. Both are correct. There is a school just nearby, and even just looking at the administration's report on page 189, almost 2,100 cars a day are using that particular stretch of road, and the 85% speed, percentile speed is at 58. So they are speeding. So the resolution where we're asking administration are asking for the local police to be involved in some sort of road management there as well as far as enforcement. I think it's important. Councillor Baker also brought up the fact that with this particular school, because its location And because it's all been built around the livable neighbourhoods policy, a lot of young people do walk to this school, ride bikes and scooters, and we know what scooters and sometimes cars don't always mix in the right way. So very supportive of the amendment put up by the ward councillors, and we'll wait to see what administration comes back to council with, hopefully before the April 24 deadline.
Councillor Treby, would you like to speak to the amended substantive motion? Thank you.
He probably has nothing to say, but Deputy Mayor might.
Deputy Mayor Treby, thank you.
Look, just very, very, very briefly, I think I'd like to congratulate Councillor Coetzee in adding value to the recommendation that was presented by the administration. I think that provides an appropriate amount of, and that's a recommendation as amended, I think it provides the appropriate amount of community-based quality that reflects local conditions, and I think that's, that adds great value to the overall quality of the report and the recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that is passed unanimously. We go to item CSO 10623, the warrant of payments for the period to the 30th of April 2023. Do I have a mover and seconder for this item? Moved Deputy Mayor Treby, seconded Councillor Civic. Deputy Mayor Treby, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you. I think it's all clear.
Councillor Civic, would you like to speak to this item? Are there any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that is passed unanimously. We go to item CSO 20623, Financial Activities Statement for the period ended 30th of April 2023. Do I have a mover and seconder for this? Moved Deputy Mayor Treby, seconded Councillor Rowe. Deputy Mayor Treby, would you like to speak to this?
Reserve my right.
Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to this?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Are there any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that item is passed unanimously. We go to CSO 30623, the Financial Hardship, Collection of Rates and Service Charges. Do I have a mover and seconder for this? Moved Deputy Mayor Treby, seconded Councillor Newen. Deputy Mayor Treby, would you like to speak to this?
I will actually, on this particular item. Thank you, Mayor Aitken. Only to reiterate that the financial hardship policy was instigated by this council as a direct result of a motion on notice that I put to council several years ago. And it provides an appropriate amount of support and recognition that there are a number of people in our community who are doing it hard. And we do recognise that. And there needed to be an appropriate policy process and mechanism in place, which, can I say now, I think is very much mainstream across the local government industry. Very pleased that the city was a leader in having this policy in place. I'm also pleased that there's an amount of streamlining, I think, and harmonising to make it more user-friendly from an operational perspective, and provides us with the opportunities to make sure that those in hardship can with confidence approach the city and put their case for some consideration about their financial position, and will receive the appropriate amount of care and concern from the city's administration. I wholeheartedly recommend this to council for consideration.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Treby. Councillor Newen, would you like to speak to this item?
I do, but I just got a question just in relation to the implementation of the policy for the financial hardship. What documents does a ratepayer have to provide for the city to assess the relief, the waiver of the fee?
Ms Jennings.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There are certain things that we look for that may be a trigger for us to look at financial hardship. It could be loss of work, for example. So that would be one example where we'd need to have some evidence, or it might be some particular illness. There's those sorts of things that are triggered.
Thank you, Ms Jennings.
Another question.
Another question,
yes,
Councillor Nguyen?
If someone was on social security benefit, could they simply just present their Centrelink pension card? Would that be enough, or do they need to also provide their financials as well?
Ms Jennings?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, it will depend on the circumstances. So it might well be that they're out of work for a period of time, or have been in the, recently in a period of time and need to catch up. So it depends what the circumstance is, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Jennings.
I'll speak in support, and it's timely given the state of the economy that we're in the last 12 months. We know that nearly every month the rates has increased. So I simply, cannot see why anyone would not support this policy. It's consistent with the motion that I put some time ago to waive the $30 administration fee. While it may not seem much, but given this time now, $30 does make a difference. Every dollar count. My only hope is that the process in applying for financial relief should be made easy, and we shouldn't make people go through the hoops completing documents several pages before they will be granted relief. They are doing it tough, so whatever we can do to make it easier to assist our residents during this very difficult time is something that I think we should do, and that is the right thing to do. So I certainly will support this policy change.
Thank you, Councillor Nguyen. Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your passed unanimously. I go to CSO 40623, review of accounting policy. Do I have a mover and seconder for this? Mover, Councillor Baker, seconder, Deputy Mayor Treby. Councillor Baker, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Aitken. Thank you, Mayor Aitken. The review, of course, which is readily self-evident by the marked-up version of this policy, is good news for local small businesses, in my view, and in particular for those businesses that are Indigenous corporations. The freeing up, so to speak, of the what's called the how do I put it, local price preference clause will certainly help new businesses relocating into the city of Wanneroo, or those who perhaps carry on business outside the city of Wanneroo, but most of whose employees overwhelmingly live within the city of Wanneroo. The increase in the what's called the how do I put it, generalised maximum from simply greater to up to 20%, in other words, from 10 to 20% as a price preference, is very much good news. And I hope it will help our small businesses grow and prosper in the city because, as is well known, and it's often said, but perhaps not really truly recognised, that the small business sector employs more people in Australia than any other sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Deputy Mayor Treby, would you like to speak to this item?
Very, very, very briefly, I think the item itself is about harmonising the accounting policy with the international and Australian accounting policy through the AASB. But can I also finish off by saying I absolutely agree with, furious agreement with Councillor Baker. And when we get to the very next item, I'd also like to speak strongly along those points that Councillor Baker raised.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Treby. Do we have any speakers against the item? If we have if we have no speakers against the item, councillors, will you please cast your vote? That was passed unanimously, councillors. We now go on to contracts and procurement, item CSO 50623, and I'm sure Deputy Mayor Treby wants to move it, and Councillor Baker would like to second it. So, Deputy Mayor Treby, could
Madam
you
Mayor,
please...
I could have possibly changed my views, but I'll let you know. I will second it, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Treby, would you like to speak to this item, please?
Only to say that, again, I'm furiously in support of the comments made by Councillor Baker, and if they are transposed into this item, I think it's a good précis into the value and benefit of the purchasing policy review.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Treby. Councillor Baker, would you like to speak to this item?
I think so. Just to endorse Councillor Treby's comments, of course, for obvious reasons, and to also once again highlight that Councillor Treby and I invariably are always on a unity ticket with any agenda item that comes on agendas before this city. And I thank him for endorsing my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that's passed unanimously, councillors. Okay, we go on to CEO 10623, the Strategic Risk Register update. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this item? Move Deputy Mayor Treby. Who is my seconder? Councillor Herridge. Deputy Mayor Treby, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, I will, because this is actually quite an important item, councillors. When we talk about risk and we talk about strategic risks within organisations, particularly those with a governing board such as ours, the strategic risks of these such organisations are the responsibility of that governing board, as these are. The administration do manage the operational risks from oversight from the council, and do so in alignment with the risk appetite statement that council has set to guide that risk management. But the strategic risks are indeed ours. I will note of great interest, and it will possibly come as a surprise to some, because we often talk about the lack of water as being a strategic risk, and indeed it is. However, a new phenomenon as a result of the environment we find ourselves in is in fact the evidence of rising water. And that's a very interesting risk for us to identify, and to also bring that to the attention of the appropriate state government agencies when we talk about development, particularly in that East Wanneroo area. When we talk about the farming of the pines, as this is indeed, it could be argued, a consequential impact of the farming of the pines has resulted in a rise in groundwater levels. So it is a risk we need to be mindful of. It's also it's a risk that we're going to have to be very careful about managing into the future, because rather than trying to find water to put into some of the subdivisions, one of our big problems may well be moving that excess water around subdivisions. And it's something that future councils will have to deal with. So I think identifying at this stage places us in good stead to make sure that all of our long-term planning recognises this risk, and we put those controls in place at the earliest possible point.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Treby. Councillor Herridge, would you like to speak to this item?
Thanks, Mayor. Just quickly, wholeheartedly agree with Deputy Mayor Treby. Thank you for that. I'm excited to see this actually come on the list. Everyone knows that Lansdale is full of water. It's something that I did bring up quite early on in the piece when I came on council, because we do actually have quite a significant excess within Warradale Park. I'm excited to see this continue with every stakeholder that we have to make sure that it's completely always top of mind.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge. Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. and it's passed unanimously. We now go to item CEO 20623, the Annual Delegated Authority Review 2022-23. Do I have a mover and seconder for this?
Seconder.
I'll move Councillor Civic, seconded Councillor Baker. Councillor Civic, would you like to speak this item?
Madam Mayor, I'm comfortable with this item. I think delegated authority register is well maintained by administration. Thank you.
Councillor Baker, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, it's a very detailed report, of course, with the actual delegated authorities attached. Makes for an interesting reading, looking at the number of instances where, and the circumstances where the CEO can delegate, and certain circumstances where he cannot delegate. Of course, it's a matter of looking at the Act in terms of the non-delegated powers that he obviously has. The other thing too is that, as we're aware, the Act, the Local Government Act 1995, was substantially amended and was assented to by the Governor on behalf of the King, I think it was. It would have been the King, on 18 May this year, and there's a myriad of amendments in the Act which impact upon delegated authorities. And of course, all the amendments don't necessarily start on the same day. The amendments don't necessarily all start on the date of assent. Most of them don't actually. They start on the date of proclamation. And it's possible for different divisions and different parts within the amended Act to have different start times or proclamation date times, essentially start date times. And the same applies with the regulations. I've not seen the new amended set of regulations at all. I've tried to get a copy. It's not possible. And it may well, and as I understand it, it may well be the Parliamentary Council has not yet drafted the new regulations to mirror the amendments in the Act, of course. So, yes, and I assume, of course, that from time to time, as those new amendments in the Act are proclaimed and as the new regulations are proclaimed or become law, that obviously there'll be a need to review once again, all over again, all these delegated authorities and make the appropriate amendments. It will be very much a painstaking task, but nonetheless, once it's done, it should put us in good stead until the next major set of amendments come through, or what we were told we would get, which we haven't got. There is a new Local Government Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Are there any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that item is passed unanimously. We go to item CEO 30623, review, extension and reveal of council policies. Do I have a mover on this item? Councillor Rowe, do I have a seconder? Councillor Herridge. Councillor Rowe, do you want to speak to this item, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm supportive of this item. Council may recall last week I had considered foreshadowing an amendment and it was based on the fact that we were repealing the community garden policy. Thereafter, I had a good conversation with both Ms Terrelink and Ms Russell, and the community guidelines for establishing and supporting a community garden were revised and uploaded to the website. That was my primary concern, that members of the public were able to see what they needed to do to be able to establish a community garden in their local area and the type of support that the city could be able to offer them. And now that I'm aware that it is available to the public, not just tucked away in a management procedure, more than happy to support this item, and I encourage councillors to support it as well.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Herridge, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing else to add other than that it's a fantastic report and I'll be supporting as well.
Thank you. Do I have any speakers against this item? Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Mayor. The actual changes itself I'm fine with. The only thing out of personal caution, and obviously I thank administration for changing the previous reports, was the removal of management procedures. I noticed that this item, mainly in particular the review category within this agenda item, for example, in the roadsides memorial policy, it actually still mentions that in the objective of the policy, and I don't think that's really good for governance in terms of separation of powers between administration and council. If I was to be questioned by a ratepayer, I wouldn't have that information on hand, nor would I be able to produce or clarify any questions, nor can I request that information on behalf of a ratepayer. So it's mentioned in all the asset management policy under the relevant documents and delegations. It's also under the roadside policy, It is also in the other ones, but they are obviously seeking an extension/repeal. But I'm mainly speaking in against just as a personal precaution, as I don't feel comfortable voting for support because of those clauses. Thank you.
Mr CEO, would you like to make comment?
Thank you, Mayor. Perhaps two comments. One is we have reviewed the delegated authority register to remove the management procedures. Can I just perhaps explain in the purpose of good governance? There are powers that are set by council, which are policy and strategy, and then there is the roles of the CEO to administer council's decisions, administer policy. And as a CEO, CEOs establish management procedures that provide the criteria and where there's discretion, documentation to guide consistent quality decisions to be made post-council adopting a policy, a strategy or a decision. It is not bad governance to show a linkage between council-adopted policy and management procedure. There are many decisions a chief executive implements on behalf of council, and Councillor Wright is correct that many of those management procedures elected members aren't entitled to access, but a lot of things that are conducted under executive powers or administrative powers are supported by administrative documents that council don't need to view or inspect, but have some assurance that as their chief executive has policies and procedures in place to ensure consistency of implementation and application of policy and procedure.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Councillor Baker, do you have a question?
Yes,
Councillor Baker.
To the CEO, please. Just regarding attachment 5, which of course is the policy titled, as I read it, the Community Transport Service Policy. Correct? That appears on page, or starts on page 575 of the agenda. I'm just turning now to page 578. There's a definition for the term seniors groups. You recall we had an agenda item on the agenda earlier this evening regarding some seniors up at Langara. It says that the groups are defined as those organisations whose purpose is to provide activities for individuals, etc., etc., etc. What I'm asking is, do those seniors groups have to be incorporated or not? Or can they simply give themselves a name, such as the I don't know, the members of the on Golden Ponds Retirement Village? Can they simply use the name, or does the city insist that any seniors group be incorporated? And obviously have what amounts to charitable objects, please.
Mr CEO.
For you, Madam Mayor, I might defer to the Director of Committee in Place, but in the context of the policy, I think it's probably important to read the definition as Councillor Baker has so done on page 578, plus the definition ... seniors group under policy implementation, exemption, sorry, and the terms and conditions of hire, which together would answer that question. I don't have the conditions of terms of hire in front of me, but I might ask Ms Terrelink if she can provide any further advice.
Ms Terrelink?
Yeah. Thank you, and through you, Mayor, my understanding is that the groups don't have to be incorporated.
Thank you. Are there any speakers for this item? There are no speakers for this item, no one against this item. Councillors, please cast your vote. And so the item is passed, 13 for, 1 against, and the vote against was Councillor Wright. Okay, item 9, motions on notice, we have none. Item 10, urgent business, we have none. Item 11, the confidential report has been done. Item 12, the date of the next meeting. The next special council meeting has been scheduled for 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday the 20th of June 2023 to be held at Council Chambers, Civic Centre, 23 Dundebar Road. And item 13, I declare the meeting closed at 8 p.m. Thank you.